Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Two Grown Men. As usual, Yemi on the mic.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Olaomi, and tonight we have royalty in the house.
Bum,
We
bum,
have
Thank you very much.
We have an Omoba in the house.
Yes, so
Sanu de Zua. How are you, my brother? What's going on?
Doing very well, man.
Buenos dias, hermano. How are you doing?
Buenos dias. How do you say it, friend? Bonjour. Ekaro, ekale.
Abo.
Ekule.
Sanu de Zua.
Yes, sir.
As we say in Ijebu, Eweso.
That's right. Do you know my mom is Ijebu?
Really?
Yeah, you told me.
Lami and I are Jebu as well.
Yeah, my mother's from Djibouti. And I was talking to her about possibly coming for that Ujude.
Oh, you should. You should. You
I
should.
need to experience that a few times in my life. It's necessary. It's part of my heritage. I have been when I was a kid, but I haven't seen it as an adult. So I definitely would look forward to that. But yeah, happy to be here.
Welcome, bro. Well, we need to have a series on Ujude, but I think I'm going to get my Egbo to come and join us to discuss.
That'll be fun.
I'm going to get Farouk. Yeah, I'll ask him. I'll ask Bros D see if he can come and join us for Ujude. But incidentally, one of my earliest memories as a child is actually from Ujude. One of my earliest memories.
Oh wow.
Yeah, one of my earliest memories. Yeah, was watching the parades go past. Yeah, and I remember being terrified of the horses, but yeah. I was terrified. When you were like 5 years old, a horse is big. Let's understand how big a horse is to a 5-year-old. Yeah. Now, imagine how many, when you're now surrounded by horses, there are like 20, 30 horses in a crowd. You will feel small. I dare you to not be afraid. I dare you to not be afraid. That's my story. Imagine. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I experienced it at a young age as well, but I think I must have been like 11, 12-ish. And that may actually be the last time I was in Djibouti. Funny enough.
Serious?
Yeah.
I hope you're not afraid of the horses at 11 or 12.
No, I wasn't afraid of horses. I mean, I grew up in the north. I grew up around horses in the north, so you know. True. Yeah, I grew up in Kaduna, so horses were like every other weekend, polo club, every other weekend at the friends' houses in their backyards. You know, people riding horses. It's kind of normal.
Yeah. So you're trying to shame me for being afraid of a horse. I was 5 years old, not 12.
I'm 5 and 11 too. Huge.
World of difference. World of difference.
11 is like preteen now.
Twice my age. Talking about it wasn't afraid of horses. So baby.
I mean, I was fine at some point, you know, in Kaduna.
It's okay.
I'm trying to make.
It's okay. I've chosen violence. Okay. Anyway, everyone, we're starting a new series. We're talking about following our passions.
Yep.
It's something that resonates deeply with Yemi and I. You know, we're middle-aged people, and we're just talking about how we channel, like how we distress and how we find like fulfillment in this life. Because it appears that this life, what we do is go to work. We're working men, we're fathers, we're husbands. And how often do we really stop and ask, what do you enjoy doing? What are your passions? How do you get relief for your soul? And in the course of talking about this, we thought we'd bring in a few people who somehow epitomize, you know, the notion of discover your passions and explore them. So over the next few weeks, we're going to bring on a few people, a few of our brothers, and hopefully sisters, who will come and shed light on how they, you know, what their passions are and how they go about following these passions. Yes, that's what it is in a nutshell. So, El, how are you doing? I'm going to let you introduce yourself to us. Tell us, you know, no introduction, but just tell us a couple
Yeah,
of
just
things.
tell us. Yeah.
Hey, I do feel like
ease us into it.
I feel like I do need a bit of an introduction, especially to the Gen Zs. They don't know who I am.
Yes, so please.
And I know you have a Gen
The floor
Z
is yours.
right? So essentially, my name is Larry Dabbery. Once upon a time, I was popularly known as LD. I'm a man of many passions at different times and phases of my life. I grew up in the north in Kaduna. Always been a lover of creative arts. So I danced, I drew comics, I wrote lyrics, and then somehow that's how I ended up being, LD as a musician, a rapper. Moved to Lagos, studied architecture at Unilag, but I also happened to be from a technology, well, an engineering family, I would say. So there were computer engineers, electrical engineers, and the likes all around me. My sister's engineers, my brother's engineers. My dad was like a pioneer of sorts in engineering in Nigeria and on the telecom side of things. So I was exposed to a lot of things. So technology, arts, creativity, and then the technical side of creativity as well, studying architecture, right? So many people will know me for so many different things. I've done podcasts, I've been in tech, I've had startups and exited. I've done music, obviously. I've produced music. I've produced music videos. I've gone on the interactive media side and built like websites. I've built, applications, games, all that kind of stuff. And more recently, I followed my wife's passion for real estate, and I basically ended up on the real estate side of things. So what I've done over the last like 10 years, I'd say now, is really narrow everything down to focusing on real estate, because of how much time that I felt that I needed to give to it. And also just from growth, right? And understanding that if you want to do anything really, really well, you kind of have to give it everything. I kind of knew that intuitively growing up, but I realized that in order to scale, in order to like really grow anything, like you have to give it your all. Like I can't like spread myself around and expect anything to really become anything significant, right? So it's like this analogy they say, right? You could go an inch deep and and a mile wide, right? So an inch deep and a mile wide, or you can go a mile deep and an inch wide. So it really just depends on, and it's something that you have to kind of remind yourself after some time, especially because of how much I spread myself when I was younger, right? Because while I was doing music, I was also in IT. Most people didn't know that. A lot of people didn't realize that the last, I would say, 10 years of my music career, I actually lived in America, and I was an IT, I guess, consultant, so to speak, in America while I was LD in Nigeria and Africa. Obviously, internet and Instagram started to open my ass a little bit, but I was doing a lot of things, right? And in 2019, just before the pandemic, when I got together with my wife and we started to do this, I said to myself, okay, the one thing that I've learned over the last, decade or so is that I really need to focus. Anything that I put my heart to, I'm able to do really, really well. So I'm going to give this one, the best shot. And I'm very grateful. So if you're following me now, I know this is a super long introduction, but if you're following me now, you'll see that I talk a lot about real estate and not much more. Maybe I talk about Manchester United every now and again. That's one of my things that I do to relax is, watch soccer, and we'll talk about all those other things later. But long introduction, but in summary, my name is Larry Dabbery. I'm a creative, and I consider myself a starter. That's what I've done a lot in my life, is started a bunch of things. So, yeah.
Thank you very, very much. It sounds like you have a lot of passions from that intro. So we're really excited to dig deep into the different passions. And do you get jealous of your passion sometimes? Like, when you're so creative and you have so many things that you're doing, like you said, real estate, IT, production of music videos, some of them have been all together and simultaneously, and some of them have been layered from your introduction in terms of you've done one and you've done one maybe after you finished the first one. Do you find that you have one passion that eclipses all in terms of the joy it gives to you, or do you enjoy all of them equally? I guess that's my first question.
Passion is the spark, but purpose is the fuel. So every single time in my life, there's something I'm trying to accomplish, right? And it usually happens through whatever it is that I put my heart to, which is why I introduce myself as a creative, right? I'm always trying to create things, and hence why I also call myself a starter, right? And so whatever purpose I have in that moment is what helps to sort of build what comes next, right? At some point I was dancing, at some point I was singing, at some point, and then now I'm doing real estate. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's really more about just what I feel like doing in that moment. And whatever it is, I just go like all in. I'm just that kind of person. But then I'm also always trying to do things that people haven't done before, because that's where I really, that's where I feel like I thrive a little bit, or that's what I enjoy, I would say. I enjoy doing, like, breaking ground, doing things that are different, building things that are interesting, or even just helping something that exists just go to the next level. Even if I just happen to move the needle by an inch, like those are the kind of things that get me like going.
No, thank you very much. Definitely answers the question.
I was gonna say, when Larry was listing his passions, like his achievements, I wanted to say you and I are the same age. It feels like you've packed like a lot of living, a lot of experience in that time. I guess there's another thing to be said for how you utilize your life, but it feels like you've done a lot and you're still doing a lot.
Okay, my excuse is that I started super early because of the environment that I grew up in and because of the circumstances that I had, as a kid. So only son of my mom, living in a house. I'm the oldest boy. I've got younger sisters. My mom was a banker, so obviously she was hardly ever around. My dad was in telecoms, but he was a site type of engineer, so he wasn't around much. So I had a lot of free time, as a kid. And because of that, I was able to grow creatively, to just tap into all kinds of different things. And I got excited about a lot of different things, right? And then I was also in an environment that enabled creativity. Now, we're all Niger. I don't know how many of you have lived in the North, but I've said this to many people. I came to the realization probably 20, 30 years down the road that if you want to really nurture creative juices, you go to the North in Nigeria.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir. Why? So there's something about the pace. There's something about the weather. And something about the it's hard to use the word peace now because it's kind of different, right? But I would say 20, 30 years ago, it was the most peaceful place to be, right?
Wow.
And the days just felt much longer in Kaduna compared to when I moved to Lagos. You could do so much in one day. In Lagos, you pick 2 tasks. That's it.
If traffic allows you.
If it's traffic. It's also just recently too. Like I've been spending a lot of time, like diving into like mindfulness and meditation and stuff. And what I realize is that the distractions don't allow you to again go a mile deep at anything. Because while you're there trying to pour yourself into something, things are tugging you in all kinds of different directions. It's life challenges, it's people, it's noise, it's chaos, just, with everything that's going on. But I enjoyed that growing up in Kaduna. That was the one thing that I really missed. And that was interestingly enough, one of the reasons why I chose to actually relocate back to the US was because I needed to find that again. So yeah, plenty of things happening, great opportunity to nurture all these different things that you're thinking about, whether it's drawing, singing, dancing, painting, whatever it is. And you'll find, interestingly, that the first generation of Afrobeats artists all had some kind of time in the North, especially the rappers, the singers. So whether it's Plantation Boys or it's Idris Abdul Karim and ElDee, or it's Tribesmen, or it's SWAT Roots, or it's Kaduna, it's Jos, it's Abuja, it's Kaduna, it's Jos, it's Abuja. You know what I mean? So there's just something about, something about that. Ijebu gave me that vibe as well. Ijebu gave me the exact same vibe. So if I were to give any kind of advice, not that I am in a position to, if you're creative, unless you have a nice place in Elashe or one of these, fancy little beaches where you can really get that amount of peace and quiet, find yourself a place somewhere in Ibadan, somewhere in, Oshogbo, Ilorin, Kaduna, Akure. Because you'll be able to grow a lot of things. Yeah.
Very powerful, Larry.
What you were saying about Jos now kind of resonates. I've been to Jos, I've been to Kano, I've been to Kaduna, I've been to Ilorin. And, UJ is famous for the theater arts program, right? University of Jos. It's quite famous for the number of actors, especially in the 80s. The actors that were in our sitcoms and our movies and co. A lot of them could trace their roots to the University of Jos, to the theater arts program. So maybe you have a point there. And then, of course, Jos and the Abaga brothers and that entire crew.
You're 100% right. Film industry really literally started in Jos. That's just what it is. Like if you're thinking about all of the folks who wrote, produced, created all of the early shows, they were all
Two-Face. Yeah.
They're all from the North, And I'm not saying, this is not to say that you can't be creative if you were, born and raised in the South, which is one of the things that amazed me about freestyle, who's part of Tribesmen, right? Was that I met this boy who grew up in Lagos, who grew up in Bariga, and could do this so well and had honed his skills that well, right? In that environment, I could imagine how much more he could have done if he was in a different environment, like kind of like the environment that we were coming from, right? So that was what amazed me. So I'm not saying that there aren't talented people and that you can't accomplish things. I'm just saying that the environment outside of what is really the most chaotic environment you can be in the country would enable you to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lonnie.
There's something to be said for nature and nurture, where nature gives you the talent, but the environment is what nurtures that talent. And you can be the most talented person on this planet. If you don't have the right environment, you cannot grow the best seeds. To grow the best seeds or farm produce, you have to have the right conditions, the right soil, the right environmental conditions. So it appears that what you're saying is very, very valid. It would appear, and I guess as parents, it's something that we need to be mindful of. But Yemi, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say I totally agree with you, ElDee, because think about it. When companies have a retreat, they don't go to the city. Where do they go? They always go where? Villages. They always go country homes. They always go to the beach where they want to brainstorm. Okay, things are not working well in the business. Our numbers are down. Our profit margins are down. They always go outside to this sort of like area where, like you said, there's less noise and everybody just lodges in a hotel room and they can go and just really, and then usually you tend to see that those retreats come up with a lot of great outputs that they can now put into the business and say, okay, now we're back on track. We've got a lot of people are now relaxed because like you said, sometimes the city, there's just the life of the city day by day. It can just be draining.
Mm-hmm.
And so that angle you brought from Joss, a very interesting one. I've never really thought about it from that perspective, but it kind of makes sense. So thanks for giving us that.